voting methods. So we're going to talk about some vocabulary first of all. The first thing we're going to talk about is ranking, which most people are very familiar with. And ranking has to do with assigning a number. Generally speaking, it's like 1, 2, 3. Meaning, for example, if I asked you what your favorite ice cream was, you'd say my favorite number 1 ice cream might be vanilla. My second favorite would be chocolate. And then maybe my third favorite is strawberry, so on and so forth. To each item on the ballot. So in our presidential election, if you thought Mitt Romney is the number 1 candidate, you would assign him a 1. If you thought Barack Obama was the number 2 candidate, you would assign that person a 2. If there was an independent candidate, like in the past there's been a man named Ralph Nader running for Green Party, you would assign him number 3. And you would rank the people that you liked in the order that you liked them. A preference table identifies the number of first, second, third, etc. rankings, which we just got done talking about, for each item on the ballot. So for example, if we took a poll of our class of who you wanted to be president, we would say, okay, how many people think Mitt Romney would be number 1? And I would count off Mitt Romney number 1. How many people think Mitt Romney should be number 2? How many people think Mitt Romney should be number 3? And then I'd do the same for the other candidates as well. And then we'd have a total of each number of first place rankings, second place rankings, third place rankings, so on and so forth. Plurality. Plurality, when you talk about plurality in voting, this is the winner is the candidate that has the most first place votes. This is the thing that we're most familiar with. All right, how many people want to take the test on Tuesday? And we raise our hands. How about Wednesday? How about Thursday? Whichever vote gets the most, that's it. Okay, number 1 votes. Next is majority. Here, the winner is the candidate that gets more than half the votes. So the difference, and I should say first place votes. The difference between the first and the second is you could have only 30% of the people voting this candidate number 1 and they could still win, whereas in the second part, over 50% have to vote them as number 1 or there's not a winner. You keep going until there is a winner. A runoff is when you count the first preference votes to choose the top 2 candidates. Then you vote on just those two to get a winner. So if there are 10 people running for an election, what we'll do is we'll cast ballots, and whoever gets the most votes, the top 2 candidates, everybody else is wiped out, and now we only vote on those 2. So one of your candidates might not have got chosen, but now you have to pick one of the 2 that are left over. That's a runoff. A lot of cities are going to that for their mayors and their city council members, where they eliminate some and then run off based on that. A pairwise comparison. This is where you list all possible pairings and run off each to determine the winner. So for example, if Shirley, Caleb, myself, and Mai are running for some kind of office, we'll check out between me and Mai who wins. Me and Shirley, who wins? Me and Caleb, who wins? Caleb and Shirley, who wins? Caleb and Mai, who wins? Shirley and Mai, who wins? And whoever has the most winnings out of the pairing up, that's the winner. Okay, that's called a pairwise comparison. And then the last kind is called a points for preference. So you assign points to each preference and the winner is the choice with the most points. So this is similar to a runoff in a way, in that, for example, let's say we're talking about ice cream and we have 3 choices: chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. And I say to you, I want you to give 4 points to your favorite, 2 points to your second favorite, and 1 point to your third favorite ice cream. Everybody in here writes down the list. I take all the ballots, I total up all the points for each ice cream, and whichever ice cream has the most points, that's the winner. Okay, that's called points for preference. Questions about any of those? Okay, so in this example, we have 3 athletic shoes: Fila, Nike, and Reebok. And we're going to look through each one and find out which one would be the winner based on the methodology. So step number 1 says, find the majority winner if there is one, and remember to figure out how many ballots had each particular vote. So here, you want to find out which ones have the most votes, because remember, in order to have a majority winner, you have to have somebody who has more than half the votes. So let's just take a look at that. So Fila has how many first place votes? So Fila had, if you look at the number 1 up at the top of the table, you'll see that they were ranked number 1 4 times down below and 6 times below. So they had 10 first place votes. Whereas when you look at Nike, Nike had 7 first place votes. And then when you look at Reebok, and see how many first place votes they have, that's 8 first place votes, because the number 1 for them tells you down below that they had 8 first place votes. remember that in a majority you have to have at least half. There are 25 voters that are voting. So in order to have the majority, you would have to have 13. What that means is there is no majority winner. So in a plurality win, the plurality win means who has the most first place preference choices. If you look back in the table, this one is not majority, so you don't have to have over half. You just have to have the most. So Fila wins because they have 10 first place votes, which is the most. First place votes. So in this case, with a plurality, all it means is whoever has the most first places, you win. Done. In runoff, you only take the top 2 choices. So out of all of the choices that we had for winning, if you look back at the first one, you'll notice that when you look at first place votes, who got the most first place votes? That's all you care about. I look back up in the table, the most first place votes went to Fila, and the second most went to Reebok. So now I'm only going to look at Fila and Reebok. That's all I care about. So I look at Fila. Oh, my goodness. So I look at Fila, and I look at Reebok only. Fila had 10 votes, and Reebok had 8, and that's why I'm only looking at them. And then what I do is, as I'm looking at them, I look at who wins between Fila and Reebok. That's all I care about. Who wins between Fila and Reebok? So I go back up into my table, and I look how they're compared. So in the first group, how many people chose Fila over Reebok? Nope. Fila and Reebok, first group. 4 people said Fila is better than Reebok. So I go down below here, and for Fila better than Reebok, there were 4. Then I go to the next group, and I see Fila, Nike, Reebok. Who wins between Fila and Reebok there? How many? Fila wins 6 people. So I write that down. There's another 6. Oh my goodness. There's another 6 people there. Then I go to the third group of people that are voting. And who wins, Fila or Reebok? Reebok. How many people said that? 7. So down below, I write down that 7 people chose Reebok over Fila. And then I go to the last group of voting preferences, and I look at Reebok and Fila, and who wins there? Reebok. How many people said that? 8. So I go down below, and I write down 8. So I look at the total for Fila, there were 10. I look at the total for Reebok, there were 15, and that tells me Reebok wins. Which is really strange when you think about it. This is what I was talking about a little bit earlier. 10 people said overall Fila was the best. But in the runoff, Reebok wins because they had more votes out of the top 2. So kind of a strange situation. In the pairwise is where you match up each group and you see who wins out of the 2, and whoever has the most wins is the champ. So let's look at, first of all, Fila versus Nike. Who wins out of Fila versus Nike? So I go back up here,